Hello everyone, I'm Milo and welcome to my town. And welcome to a new episode of the Visual Novel Corner. It's been a while since I made one of these. I know I had said in a few other videos how I wanted to cover certain titles, and then never ended up committing to do that. Apologies if you were waiting for one of those, but maybe someday they'll come. Today, instead of talking about a single game, I'd like to tackle a more broad topic, specifically about two creators that are big names on the visual novel sphere, and in 2025 had several releases surrounding them, making it a pretty interesting year for visual novel fans of them respectively, and even more for fans of both of them. I'm of course talking about Kotaro Uchikoshi and Kazutaka Kodaka. Let me introduce them for those who don't know about them. Kotaro Uchikoshi is known in the past decade for the Zero Escape series, and his most recent one, AI The NeoNeon Files. Though he does date back a bit more with the Ever games, such as Ever 17 or Remember 11. I actually have yet to play those games. I have had the files for Ever 17 that a friend shared with me several years ago. I just never actually found some time to play it. Before 2025, his most recent work was the second AI The NeoNeon Files game, Nirvana Initiative, released in June 2022. Then we have Kazutaka Kodaka, who is mostly known as the creator of the Danganronpa series. He has had some other projects, but overall he is very much known for this feat. Before 2025, his most recent project was Master Detective Archives Raincoat, released in June 2023. Something they both have in common is that most of their games were under the publishing umbrella of Spike Chunsoft, as most of their published flagship titles indeed have these two names tied behind them. Additionally, they both are also part of Tokyo Games, a game studio founded in 2017. Despite this, a good amount of their projects are still affiliated with Spike. While I do not entirely get that, it's besides the point. Now that we know who they are, let me introduce the games that had their names attached and released last year. I will let you know that it was genuinely a crazy time to be a fan of both of these creators, as every few months I was genuinely getting something else that was completely up my alley. And it's why I personally deem 2025 as the year of Kodaka and Uchikoshi. Going in release order, the first game was Tribe 9, released on February 20th, 2025. Kodaka was the person involved with this project. Unfortunately, if you know about this game, you'll know that it's not a story that ends happily. I do have a full video about it, but I'll give you the rundown here. Tribe 9 as a game was part of a larger multimedia project that was first announced back in 2020. Its main theme was that of extreme baseball, being played in a crazy, high-tech version of Tokyo. The project from the get-go was a collaboration between Tokyo Games and Aksys Games, a Japanese game studio. In 2022, an anime series that would serve as a prequel to the game aired, followed by some manga adaptations that mostly retold the anime. Then finally, on February 20, 2025, after relatively a long wait, the actual game was released to the public. The game itself was a free-to-play 3D action RPG, with the main gameplay mechanic being 3D battles with enemies using a team of 3 characters. You explore different cities in a 2.5D styled map, with characters being represented as flat sprites. And at certain points, you would play that originally showcased Extreme Baseball, which was a fusion of the actual sport with a logic debate against your opponents. Now, two things to remark about the game. First is that it doesn't sound too much like a visual novel. And you would be right. Its intricate battle mechanics and world exploration definitely separate it a lot from visual novel descriptors, and give it more towards an action-adventure game. But given the relation to Tokyo Games and Kodaka specifically, I always saw its narrative side as an extension of one, an honorary title, if you would. The second remark about the game is that I've always been using the past tense to talk about it so far, and that is because the game no longer is. It was, because as of November 2025, the game has been taken offline and is no longer playable. I did mention it was free to play, and unfortunately, such a choice for a game usually tends to mean they are also live service, which was the case. On top of that, it was also a gacha game, with microtransactions as their way to generate income. After just 3 months of operation, they decided to cancel any future updates for the game and left it on a life support state for 6 months, when they pulled the plug and ended the service. Honestly, it's a really sad case, because if the game wasn't a gacha, it would actually have been great. The gameplay loop was very solid, and the story was gearing up to be really interesting. Funny enough, even though it had many things that felt Kodaka coded, he didn't actually write the story for the game. His involvement was primarily on the anime 3 years back, but I believe he gave pointers or was at least an early supervisor on the story that was being released for the game, and that's why it felt like he was actually behind it. If you want to know a more in-depth story, please watch my video that fully covers the game. It is truly a shame what happened to it, but I did enjoy all the time that I got out of it, and it was one of my most played games of 2025. Thankfully, Kodaka himself took on the mantle to continue the story with a non-profit doujin circle that is aiming to retell the story that was released while the game ran, and continue it from there, so that it can have a proper conclusion, as we were unfortunately left with a cliffhanger. So far they have rewritten the prologue, which I've yet to check, but I'm glad that it is continuing even in this form. Several members of the original team for the game are back in this project, so it is very nice to see as a fan. Since it is freelance work, however, it may take a while between we get updates. Even though Kodaka had an involvement with Tribe 9, he wasn't there too much leading into its release, though he did comment on the closure announcement, and as I mentioned, later led its continuation. It's not because he didn't care, but because he had something way bigger in his hands. And that was none other than the second game on this list, the 100 line Last Defense Academy. Originally revealed in 2024, this project was actually the first full in-house game from Tokyo Games, being published by Aniplex. If you recall how I mentioned the relation to Spike Chunsoft with the games of both of these creators early on, I do not know the whole specifics, but it looks like Spike has a greater control of those games due to being the IP holder. This is probably corroborated by the many times through the years when Kodaka would be asked about Danganronpa, where his reply would usually be, "Please ask Spike Chunsoft, as I can do anything." That is not the case with the 100 line, however, as they as Tokyo Games actually have full control and ownership of this title, and as such, we're advertising it like crazy, because they also put all of their efforts and resources into making this project. Literally on the verge of bankruptcy if it didn't end up delivering the results that they expected. Thankfully, it totally did, and they continue on thanks to that. The game was released on April 24th, 2025. The 100 line is an insanely ambitious project that mixes both of the geniuses of Kodaka and Uchikoshi into a single game. That's right, both of them are part of this title as main writers. The premise of the game is that a group of youths wakes up in a desolate school, being told that using a special skill they possess in their blood, they need to defend the school for 100 days from an onslaught of monster attacks, weighing a war that will define the fate of humanity in the process. It has a very similar structure to Danganronpa, swapping the killing game with a war for humanity's future. You do play through 100 days, in which the story will develop throughout. As you wait for attacks, you'll have free time to train your battle skills or interact with your teammates to deepen your bonds and stats. When an invader attack occurs, the game takes the form of a tactical RPG with tower defense in the mix. It's a very interesting way to present a break from the visual novel structure that the rest of the game has. Most of what I've described so far is mostly comparable to Kodaka's style for making his games. So, what does Uchikoshi bring to the table? Well, after you play all 100 days, a certain story event happens, and from this point on, you can replay the game once more. Only now you will be given choices at different points in the story. Choices that will branch off the timeline and create alternate scenarios that depend on the actions you've taken up until that point, making it so that once you see all of the branches through their end, you'll actually be able to experience a total of 100 endings. You heard that right, this game actually has a total of 100 endings. When you play again, the story will be different from the first time around, and it will continue to deviate more and more every time you come to a branching decision, making it so that completely different stories happen in the many main scenarios that the game has. It truly is a colossal effort that went into the making of this game, and because of it, I now consider it not only my favorite game of 2025, but also a draw for my favorite visual novel of all time, alongside 428 Shibuya Scrambled. Recently, they have been advertising in their socials the 100th Line 2, but this isn't actually a sequel or DLC. It's just what the game calls itself after you complete the first 100 days and reach the credits for the first time. I guess it's fine to say it here since they're publicly acknowledging it, but part of the charm of introducing this game to someone who may not know about it is the actual mention of the 100 total endings, so I think it's fair to say it here as well. I do absolutely recommend the game. Since I tend to go blind into these games, I was expecting multiple endings due to Uchikoshi's involvement, but I wasn't mentally prepared when I found out it actually had 100 of them. There are only 21 main story scenarios, and most branch conclusions will give 2 or 3 endings that branch off at the very end, so this is how the number grows to 100. Still, those 21 different scenarios have many different narrative avenues on them, so they will feel different from one another. I'm quite glad that the game got the initial success needed for Tokyo Games to not go under, and they're still advertising it to this day, so I'm sure we'll keep seeing expansions of the game in merge and other forms. The game only ended up releasing on Switch and Steam, and it seems like they do not have plans at the moment to bring it into other consoles. I do hope that changes in the future, as going multi-platform is definitely advantageous for them. The 100 Line is truly an immense game, which makes it an interesting contrast when we consider our third title to introduce today. I'm talking about No Sleep for Kaname-date from AI The Somnium Files. This game is a rather surprising one, announced in 2025 itself as part of the March Nintendo Direct. Despite being the third title in the franchise, it actually takes place between the 2 previous games. It's also considerably smaller than them, so I've taken it to call it AI 1.5. It released on July 25, 2025. While this title, for obvious reasons, is an Uchikoshi one, he actually was not an insanely big part of it, only taking on the role of story supervisor. It does show, as this game does not actually expand that much on the series' story, mainly due to the fact that it's being placed in the middle of the 2 previous titles, so it couldn't do a whole lot without messing up the continuity. It does instead use the pre-established elements to enrich the world of the games a bit more, given its limitations. The big difference from the other 2 titles is that in this game, Team Zero Escape went back to their roots by presenting a return to the escape rooms as a form of gameplay, with more logical puzzles as opposed to those in Somnium. We still do have Somnium sequences, just not that many. It is also linear, so there are no alternate timelines. The game is indeed shorter than any of its predecessors, but it packs a good variety of extra stories as a way to fill in the gaps. From the get-go, we did know it wasn't a proper AI tree, so I am personally hoping Uchikoshi is taking his time cooking up that one. I get he was likely also busy working on the 100 Line, so hopefully he has the time to work on this one now that it's been released. Although it was originally a Switch and Steam exclusive, Xbox and PlayStation versions were confirmed and are released on February 26, 2026. Finally, we get to the final game on our list for the day. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you a whole lot since I haven't personally played it yet, but I'll tell you my experience surrounding it. It was the middle of May. I had only begun playing the 100 Line a few days prior, as I had been busy around the time of its release. I was enjoying it a lot, and I wasn't even past the first 100 days, when I see this in my social media from Spike Shunzat, suddenly announcing the next project from Kazutaka Kodaka, and my reaction was none other than, what? Already? This is crazy! The box contained a small video teaser, and after a few days the game was properly announced as Shuten Order, and to be releasing on Switch and Steam on September 5th, 2025. A project between the company DMM Games and Tokyo Games. Now again, since I haven't played it, I do not have first-hand experience about it, but I can share what I know from the trailers. The game seems to revolve around the leader of a sort of religious organization that is empowering a nation. At a certain point, the leader is killed, but by the power of the gods, they are revived, although without their memories. The prime suspects for the murder are the 5 ministry heads of the order, and you must investigate them to get to the truth of the matter. This presents 5 different routes that you can tackle in any order, and each route actually is presented in a unique gameplay style, making it like 5 games in one. One of them is a detective mystery style, while another is a dating simulator. The other 3 are also very distinct and seem to give completely different vibes from each other. As I mentioned before, Kodaka is the one behind this one. I actually am completely unfamiliar with DMM games, and as for publishing, they also went with Spike Chunsoft. I was incredibly curious about the game from its announcement. I was currently going through the game that had 100 endings, and I was being shown a game with 5 different genres inside it. However, I would say that the launch of the game was rather rocky. I was following along to the release because my interest was piqued with the Kodaka involvement and the interesting gameplay. However, a few days before the release, the price was properly set for my region, and this game is meant to have an MSRP of $50 US, but the converted price for my currency in Steam placed it at 75. I'm sorry, but there is no way I'm paying all of that. In contrast, the 100 line was 40 USD, and that game definitely has way more content than Shooten. It looks like Spike Chunsoft is not properly applying regional pricing for specific regions like Latin America or Poland, but I don't understand why Shooten ended up being so bloated. On top of this, which affected users from certain regions, the game apparently launched on a very poor state. Bad translations, wrongly formatted text boxes, actual bugs that halted progression. I was following along the forums and saw all of these issues being shared around. The game even got a mixed to poor rating on Steam reviews due to all of the problems that it had. The good thing is that after a few months, it does seem like most of these issues have been addressed. Multiple updates have been released to address these problems, and I think playing it now may actually be a decent experience. They even made a Switch 2 edition of the game and are doing a physical release in the West after it initially lacked one, and is not even a keycard in Switch 2. All of this makes me think that the game performed well, though I don't know exactly. I still do want to play it, but I am not paying that insane price listed for me. I'll wait either for a big sale, or for the time where my Steam region literally changes, and hopefully then it'll be at a fair price. And that is pretty much it. As you could see, 2025 was truly a year packed of a lot of activity regarding Kodaka and Uchikoshi, and as a fan of them, it was also a blast to have been able to enjoy all they put out. As a small bonus, I'll mention some extra tidbits that extend to what I've shared already. For one, technically speaking, there was one additional release related to Uchikoshi last year, as there was a Steam release of Ever 17 and Never 7, 2 of his older titles. However, I've been told that, at least for Ever 17, it supported the Xbox version, which was bad for different reasons, as I've come to learn. So I didn't buy it, and I doubt I will, especially at such a high price for a 2002 game. And the second one, another Kodaka related announcement happened last year, that of Danganronpa 2x2, which from the looks of it is a remake of Danganronpa 2 on a new engine, but that will also feature an alternate storyline with different events to those that happened in the original game. They've been saying that this new campaign is almost as big, if not bigger than the original, so as a fan I am incredibly curious about it. Kodaka has confirmed that his team is involved on it, so I am eager to check it out. There's no confirmed date yet, but they've scheduled it for 2026. With that, I think we've come to an end. I hope I was able to properly introduce these 4 titles that released during 2025. While Tribe 9 is no longer available, I'll be there for its successor project of NeoNeon Tribe. The 100 line was an incredible game for me that I deeply recommend. No Sleep for Kanamidate was small but refreshing, and it's feel a small guy while the true AI tree hopefully gets announced. And while I cannot comment accurately on Shooten Order as of yet, I'm still very curious about it, and I'm waiting for the day that I actually get a chance to play it. I hope you also found something that piqued your interest from this list, and if you do check them out, I hope you have as much enjoyment as I got from them myself. Don't forget, you're always welcome in my town. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.